So good afternoon. This is the third speaking engagement in a row that I've had right after lunch. I'm not sure what it is about my presentation that I get the after lunch crowd, but if you feel the need to stand up, please do so. My name is Jennifer Viudez, and I'm here from NASA Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. And I'll talk to you today a little bit about doing business with NASA. And I would like to start it out with a video, please.
Back to the moon and beyond.
It's we're wondering, what if we knew what's in the air we breathe? Becomes a cleaner planet for the next generation. We're wondering, what if we could make travel faster? Becomes a future where friends and family are never that far away. And we're wondering, what if we could explore deep space? Becomes the key to unlocking our universe's greatest mysteries. The future starts with a question. You just have to be bold enough to ask. At Langley Research Center, we put our curiosity and wonder to work, creating a better tomorrow simply because we dared to imagine it.
The impossible has become possible.
Our wonder changes the world.
I love to show that video because a lot of times when people think of NASA, they think of the space shuttle or just space. And that video shows that we're also the second A in NASA, aeronautics and airplanes and space and science as well. So we have a little bit of a lot of different portfolios. Today, we can go ahead and hit the, I'm driving now, right? I'm sorry, pardon me. Am I driving? Oops. I'm driving too fast. Pardon me. Okay, so I am from the Strategic Partnerships Office, and while I do represent one center that of the 10 that are across the United States, there is a Strategic Partnerships Office at every center. So there's one of me at each place across the U.S. This is NASA Langley. This is located in Hampton, Virginia, which is about a 3-hour drive south of here. Our campus is about 800 acres, which is about the size of Central Park. As comparison, we have about 1,800 civil servants, 1,700 on-site contractors, and at any given time, we have around 400 students because we do have a very robust intern program. I should have taken a more recent picture because the one that's on the left, that's our new Flight Dynamics Research Facility. It's the first wind tunnel to be built at NASA Langley in over 40 years. And the reason I should have taken a more recent picture is because it's almost finished and we have a really nice NASA meatball in the middle. Just so you know, we call our logo the meatball. Little inside baseball there in case you didn't know. And then on the right side, we have our new measurement systems lab. Probably the most interesting thing that you might like to know is here on the far right where it says NASA contracts sourced in Virginia totaled $2.1 billion, and this data was from FY 21. Whoops. Okay, so this is a little bit of a wordy chart, but this is all to say that that NASA as an agency, we are really making a concerted effort to work with industry, academia, and other government agencies. We have just put the Strategic Partnerships Office in place at NASA Langley in March of 23. We have a tremendous director. Her name is Rosemary Bays, and this would be the office that you would come to to engage in Space Act agreements, to learn about SBIR, our regional partnership offerings that we have, and much more. And please use me as a conduit to any of those programs should you be interested in knowing more. And here are the functional offices, if you will, in the Strategic Partnerships Office. As I just mentioned, we have a focus on regional partnerships. We have a tech transfer team that I'll talk about shortly regarding they license our intellectual property. We have a relatively new program called T2X, and they're really focused on partnering with our universities and trying to transfuse our technologies into school courses and helping students to understand how intellectual property works in a federal lab. Of course, SBIR, STTR, I'm imagining many folks in here are very familiar with that program. And then finally is my agreements team. I lead the agreements team at NASA Langley, and what that means is I'm not in procurement, I'm not over contracts, but we exercise more OTA, the Other Transaction Authority. And the Space Act of 1958 is what gave NASA the authority to enter into these types of agreements. And so we very appropriately call them Space Act agreements. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so we're going to jump first, though, into tech transfer. And so the way I like to describe tech transfer is back in the early 80s, mid-80s, there were a couple of significant laws that were passed, the Bayh-Dole and the Stevenson-Weidler, and that basically said, hey, you federal government agencies, you people are smart, you're doing all this research, you've got these labs, we want you, as you develop new ideas and develop new intellectual property, to make that available to industry. So that's what tech transfer means. We have intellectual property that's patented at NASA, and we have an office that will work with various entities to put licenses in place so that you can use the NASA technology to make a product or to make a service and build up your business and gain money. Yep, this is a little bit of an eye chart, just basically saying that NASA ranks 4th in the R&D funding that we put towards our IP. You notice that the Department of Energy had, for example, in comparison, almost 1,900 new invention disclosures. NASA had 1,841 disclosures. We're very proud of that. We work very hard as an agency to promote that idea of, we train, if you will, our researchers as they go through their normal course of their business and doing their research and their work, like I said, in the labs and so forth. They are on the hook. They are, by law, responsible as civil servants to submit what's called a new technology report, and that's where it all starts. And from that new technology report, we have a team that will vet that technology and then ultimately patent it and make it available to the public. This is the Tech Transfer University program. You can see down there at the bottom some of the Virginia participants, the College of William and Mary, Hampton University, Old Dominion University, University of Richmond, VCU, and we have more as well. And the university piece is really cool. For example, we had a Tech Transfer University connection with Johns Hopkins University. And Johns Hopkins had what was called a course called Discovery to Market. And so we would split those students, that class up into 3 different teams, and they would get to work with a NASA inventor on a particular technology, and they would do the research on the patent and what they would try to do if, for example, NASA Langley, we're one of our biggest portfolios is materials. And so if there's a certain material that can be on an airplane, for example, well, there are a lot more applications than just the airplane. And so we would have the students think up different applications, and then from that, we would hook them up with businesses, and sometimes the businesses would license the technology that the students had vetted. And it's kind of like a winning scenario for a graduating student, the university, NASA, and the company. So it's a pretty powerful program. Okay, switching over to SBIR, STTR. I'm probably preaching to the choir, but our lead there for SBIR, STTR at NASA Langley, her name is Eileen Nelson. She's a wonderful person to work with. She knows everything about SBIR, STTR. I know just enough to be a little bit dangerous. I do know that SBIR programs are run differently depending on the agency. NASA's SBIR, STTR is very robust, and I encourage you to look at the website should you be interested. And the other nugget that I'll throw out there that I don't know enough about is a new effort called NASA Ignite. So if you Google NASA Ignite, it's where the program is trying to focus on, I believe there's 10 different topics that are being focused on, and it's supposed to be a little bit of an accelerated SBIR-like experience. So I encourage you to look into that, should that interest you. Some more numbers, I'll save that for my colleague, Richard. This is a colleague of mine. Her name is Lena Little, and she is the lead for regional partnerships. And we say regional kind of loosely, if you will, so don't just think of it as the Hampton, Virginia area, or even Virginia. It could be the 5 surrounding states. She works very diligently in getting partnerships, again, from academia, industry, and other government agencies. She's extremely creative, and so there's really nothing that you could probably think of that she couldn't find a way to make it happen. So we wanted to highlight Lena's expertise here for regional partnerships. Okay, this might be something else you're interested in. These are the, in the middle there, the topics that NASA Langley has identified that we will focus on for our partnerships and our mission work. And you see there offshore wind, advanced air mobility, and SWS, I love our acronyms, that's system-wide safety for aircraft. Autonomy, AI, you've heard a lot about AI, and I was joking with somebody in the lunch line, you know how fast the government moves. Sometimes it's like the speed of light, you can't keep up, right? Just seeing if y'all are awake, okay? No, in all seriousness, we are, especially my team, we're taking a hard look at AI because much like proposals and contracts, Space Act agreements are very, very similar. And so I'm of the belief that Space Act agreement is probably something that, one of the first things that NASA should do using AI, because the information's already there. The legal clauses are already there. All of the language is there. We just have to trust it, right? And so it's my goal to create the first Space Act agreement using AI that will be signed by both NASA and the partner. And I will do that before I retire. So you see advanced manufacturing, space access, and coastal resiliency and sea level rise. We have a tremendous atmospheric science research department at NASA Langley. So that's why that's there. Of course, we're also located on the coast. Excuse me. This is a graphic of some of the local companies that we work with. You'll probably recognize Canon. We have construction companies, some collaboration spaces, some local universities, so just to kind of give you a sample of the many partnerships that we have. This is an internal effort that kind of goes along with, this is some inside baseball as I like to call it. This goes along with what I said a few moments ago about NASA really trying to take a hard look and a concerted effort to work with you and to work for you when it comes to these partnerships. And we are restructuring ourselves at the moment to take a hard look out to 2040. And a big part of that is partnerships. We have a virtual tour, and my understanding is that these charts will be available for everybody in attendance. So on your free time, go ahead and take the virtual tour of our center. I'm going to save the contract listings for my colleague Richard. The vendor database, I'll save that for my colleague Richard. And this actually is where Richard is from, and his program that he's from, Richard Mann here, my colleague from NASA headquarters here in DC. But the QR code, I checked it out earlier myself because I wasn't as familiar, but there's a lot of good information on that website that I'm sure that would interest those in the room. And Richard will cover all of this. This is contact information that from the NASA Office of Small Business. And then my information, and then I don't know how we're doing on time. I would just mention about, I do better at talking than I do with charts, but so with the Space Act Agreement, just to give you some clarification on that and what it means is there are basically two types of Space Act Agreements. One type is called a non-reimbursable Space Act Agreement, and what that means is it's very collaborative. So if there's something that you bring to the table that NASA is interested in, or it fits within one of our missions, and we can bring some expertise to the table, then we can collaborate, and then hopefully by that collaboration we can both move our missions forward, right? And so in that type of scenario, the non-reimbursable Space Act Agreement is no funds exchanged. You don't pay us, we don't pay you. The second type of Space Act Agreement is called a reimbursable Space Act Agreement. By law, NASA cannot compete with industry. And so in light of that, we have a lot of, as you can imagine, unique facilities. We have subject matter expertise. We have wind tunnels. We have lots of facilities and capabilities that if there's a need for that the company has to use that type of facility or a subject matter expert, then that, in that sense, the partner would reimburse NASA for that. So that's called the Reimbursable Space Act Agreement. And that concludes mine, and I'll turn it over to Richard. And I think there'll be a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, so my name's Richard Mann, and we'll wait for the slides to transition over.
Yeah, if you hit the right arrow, I think it might.
Oh, it's part of the same? Oh, I get to do it. Am I pointing it the wrong way, maybe? Yep, I had it upside down. There we go. Okay. Okay, so context. I'm in NASA headquarters in DC, and I have kind of, as I go through this, I have some themes that I want to touch on, and which Jennifer also touched on. So we're decentralized. And I do, our office, we're independent from the procurement office, but we work with them all the time. We deal in contracts, whereas Jennifer's shop is dealing in with agreements. So the difference between the two, as Jennifer described, reimbursable, non-reimbursable. In contracts, we have a requirement. Contract does the work, we pay them for that. Okay. In any event, the decentralization is such that the contracts come out of the centers. None of them come out of headquarters, where I am. There are no contracting officers in headquarters. Now, headquarters might provide direction, quote unquote, at times, but the market research and the contracting decisions, by and large, are made at the center. So that's where you as contractors would market to. Now, in the IT arena, we created about 4 years ago an IT procurement office, okay? And Jennifer also had a slide. My counterpart for that is Rob Betts, the IT procurement office, and I'm not sure if y'all can see the print from where you're sitting. It's a virtual office. It doesn't exist physically. He is based down at Langley, coincidentally, where Jennifer is from, okay? So the next slide has contact information, and it's got names and phone numbers. Rob is on there. I'm going to say something about email versus phone, because it's a little, little thing of mine. So NASA has a firewall for emails. Sometimes external emails don't make it through. They get trashed, and we don't see them, okay? The next thing about email is that there is a heavy volume, as you might expect, especially for the IT industry. And our email system, we use Outlook, but if it can tell if it's mass email, and it'll label as bulk. And if we see that, that email most likely is going to be treated the same as the junk mail you get at home. Okay? If it doesn't have that label, you will probably get a response, but it's going to be kind of a canned form response. Okay? And that's just due to volume. So I am old school. I am a proponent of calling rather than emailing. It gets a dialogue going. Okay? So I wanted to make that point. Okay. Here's what we spend our money on in terms of contracts. And again, I don't know that you can read this from where you're sitting. Again, these slides will be made available. This is all on our website, by the way, which is nasa.gov/OSBP. About 70 to 75% of what we spend our money on, generally speaking, is on aerospace stuff. So that's our hardware, spacecraft, rockets, research and development, engineering, manufacturing. Okay? Top NAICS code up there is R&D. That's over half of the $20 billion that we spend every year. Okay? There are 2 IT NAICS codes up there. One is 541519. Actually, there's 3. There's a 512 and there's a 517919, which is all other telecommunications. Right? If you add those 3 up, you're getting a little bit over $1 billion out of the $20 billion. Okay? So that's, and in this, it says FY 2023. We will be updating these for 24 shortly, within a month or so. But I don't expect this list to change much from year to year. Okay. I get parochial. The last time I did this was for the Loudoun County Chamber of Commerce. So I had a Loudoun County slide, so around Fairfax County. Out of the $20 billion, $855 million went to Fairfax County entities. And, you know, of that, $650 million to large businesses. Bechtel, a block away from here, doing the mobile launcher, which is really based down at Kennedy Space Center. But Bechtel's based here. I'm sure some of the, you know, some of the work is done here in terms of, you know, the engineering of it. And then small businesses, the 2 largest ones in Fairfax County are both soup contractors. One is 4 Points. They won a cloud services task order for us last year. And then there's a company called Minburn that does a lot of licenses for us, and that's also under the soup schedule. Okay, so that's what we got going on in Fairfax County. All right. ACLs does not mean, you know, a left knee injury. It means active contract listings for us. We've had this for a number of years. And that's where they're located. The 3rd bullet is the website. Now, they have to be updated manually. Okay, if we can find one day an AI way to do this, it'll save us some work. But as such, it gets out of date. Okay, and this is different from the acquisition forecast in that it's the current picture. It's not what's coming up. It's what's currently out there. So it's the incumbents. All right, and it allows you to see when the contracts expire so you can do long-term planning for the recompetes. Whereas the acquisition forecast only has things coming out a year, year and a half at most, all right? So I have a sample of it up here, and again, small print, but this is the IT one. First column is where the work is done, the first several items on there, and this is only a portion of a sheet, and this sheet is not the current one. There's more on here than what you're seeing. But the left-hand column is where the work is done. The first several ones are agency-wide contracts. The second column is the contracting office. Most of the time, that's going to be the IT procurement office. There's the NAICS code. There's the name of the contract, which is just the acronym. The first one listed is SOUP or SOUP 5. Then you have the contractor name, who the incumbent is, and the contract number. Then you have the type of competition. Was it full and open? Was it set aside? Was it GSA schedule? Was it SOUP schedule? Whatever. The second-hand column from the right is the potential value of it, and the last column is the ultimate contract end date or the last date to order. Sometimes those are not totally up to date because I'm pulling that from FPDS, and they have an exercise option, so sometimes those dates get pushed out. Okay, again, on our website. And we update them quarterly. They do get out of date quickly, though. Okay, so, but those are a good tool, I think, not only for y'all but for us as well, because it helps us speak to, you know, to what we have going on. This is the bottom of the ACL, and this is where we'll list RFPs that we know of. It's not a totally foolproof system because I'm dependent upon SAM.gov, and for these, and it's proven to be less than totally reliable in that regard. Now, the IT one, actually Rob Betts maintains that for us, and then my office maintains the rest of them, okay? All right, I put in a SOUP slide. This is SOUP 5. You know, SOUP 6, you may know, it's blackout notice still because it's still on the street. So I can't speak much to that, but this is the SOUP website, which will at least give you the SOUP 5 contractors, as well as all the other information. Everybody not know what SOUP is? Everybody does know what SOUP is. Okay, so we will move on. All right, vendor database that Jennifer mentioned. We had to reconfigure it and kind of restart it. So there was a former one that we had to shut down in June, and now we have a new one. The problem is that your registrations didn't carry over if you were registered in it. So you would have to re-register for the new one. Main purpose of the database is for communications. If we do an outreach event, or if there are certain solicitations that come out, that's one main purpose. The other main purpose is as a market research tool. This pulls your information from SAM into it. And if we want to search for, you know, say all hub zones in a certain NAICS code, we can go in there and filter that and see who's registered. All it tells us is who's interested in doing NASA work, okay? So that's the vendor database. Okay, so kind of my second major theme is that of subcontracting. And I don't have, the subcontracting dollars for 24 really aren't available till January or February, so I still have $23 information here. So we spent $20.7 billion. When I say spent, I mean obligated last year. And of that, and this is not just IT, this is everything, $7.6 billion went to small business. And of that 7.6, more money went to small business at the subcontract level than at the prime level, and that's usually the case every year. All right, so a major theme of ours, especially in the aerospace industry, is that the way to get your foot in the door is at the subcontract level. Okay, that is, and that takes real-world business development, relationship building. That strikes me as tougher to do in a virtual outreach environment than in person, but that's one of our key messages. Okay, so. At least as much opportunity at the subcontract level across all industries, okay? Now, to that end, we also publish top 20 prime contractors. Again, this will be updated for 24 in 2 to 4 weeks, I would say. Doesn't change much from year to year. Up top is Caltech. They run our Jet Propulsion Lab. If you sell to JPL, you'll be selling to Caltech. Then you have SpaceX, Boeing, Grumman, Lockheed, Jacobs Technology, the usual cast of characters. You have 2 IT companies. You have SAIC right in the middle, and then a couple below that is Leidos. Okay, and again, they got buildings within walking distance of here. All right. Again, that's on our website. Of the $20 billion that we spend, the top 20 take up almost $15 billion of that. And that's the number at the bottom. And again, I don't expect you to be able to see that from where you are. Okay. All right. Mentor Protege program. We had a new director of our office come in February. Previous one retired in December. First thing he did was pause our Mentor Protege program, and we just relaunched it November 1st. Our predecessor did the same thing. And there is a webinar about our relaunch going on right now as we speak. Okay. The 2 differences between the Mentor Protege program now and from before is one is that all small businesses are eligible now. Previously, you had to be in one of the subcategories. So you can be just a regular small business and be eligible. The second major difference is that we have keyed to supply chain gaps. We have listed NAICS codes that will be eligible for Mentor Protege program. We did not have that before. Now, are IT NAICS codes in that list? Yes, they are. You know, several years ago, there was the FAR rules about not being able to acquire IT supplies from certain entities located in China. I think that's still there. That may cause supply chain gaps, but that's what you have to key to. So it would not be a services environment for Mentor Protege. The regular everyday services stuff would probably not make it. So it's supply chain gaps. So that's a key message there. Okay, but again, this is a you know, a key component of our subcontracting program. The email address there says MSFC. That's because the manager of the program is actually down in Huntsville at Marshall Space Flight Center. Okay, all right. So, and then, like we said, we just relaunched it a few days ago. All right, third major theme is how long does it take to get a contract with NASA? This is not an instant gratification undertaking. First of all, you kind of have to wait for your opportunity to come up again. You know, a lot of our contracts are 5 years or longer. Second of all, you need 18 to 24 months, we say, to get your ducks in a row, to get your teaming arrangement in place. You know, the solicitations drop, they're on the street 30 days, maybe 60 if you're lucky. So all that adds up, okay? My anecdotal story that I like to tell is that we have these awards programs for Small Business of the Year and all that. We have a Women-Owned Small Business of the Year that won a few years ago. She started out by working for a NASA contractor, quit, started her own business, became a sub to the contractor that she used to be an employee for. And even then, it still took her 5 years to get a prime contract from NASA, even with that, you know, advantage, that built-in contact advantage. That is probably, you know, a fairly typical scenario. So it is kind of tough to break in cold turkey, especially in the IT arena, because there are just simply so many IT firms out there. All right. So, so this is what, you know, this is what we tell you, you know, and y'all know, I'm sure y'all know a lot of this, research opportunities, relationship building that we talked about. The third bullet, you know, what does that mean? Persistent, not a stalker. You don't want to be calling us every week, all right? I would say maybe 2 or 3 times a year until your RFP is getting ready to drop, and then a little bit more often to check on the schedule of things, okay? We said 18 to 24 months. You know, we always say respond to the sources sought. I know that's not necessarily easy given the time we give to respond and all that, but that's how we determine the set-asides. That's how we determine the recommended subcontracting goals, okay? That's still a thing. And I mentioned phone call versus email earlier. So that's kind of my third thing is, you know, it takes some persistence, okay? And that's contact info. The contact info on the bottom, which is me, is good for a few more weeks because I'm retiring at the end of the month. So if you call that, you know, next month it's going to be, you know, no longer in service, whatever. So for now, I go with the top one. So, and that is what I had.